You know, a few years ago I did a review, and there's still a few people that remember it, but when I did the review, it was the first half of a story that I had gotten, and it kind of got me pumped up. I had to think about it. I'm like, this is really different. And then after thinking about it, I was like, okay, they're doing something new with the character, and it's a little bit unpredictable. And this was the kind of character where much of their stories had become predictable, you know. And so I gave it a shot, and I gave the first half a review. And then I talked to some YouTubers, you know, that were still around back then, and they kind of laughed because I missed a few videos where people were totally shitting on this story. I get the other half of it, and I was wrong, and I can laugh about it. And that very story was Frankencastle, where they took the Punisher and more or less turned him into a monster in comparison to Frankenstein, and brought in a bunch of Marvel monsters there, and you know, did some things with them. And I couldn't give away the books. I gave away about half of them, and I kept the ones with Dan Baerton art and Terry Moore art and stuff, but it was shit, and I was wrong. So I'm about to shit on a book that's really popular with a lot of people, and to a certain extent I think the hype is what killed it and gave me some expectations of what the book was going to be. So it's one of those things where I'm going to try to be objective, and I'm probably going to talk about why the book let me down. I could change my mind later when I read the second volume, and that is Paper Girls. And the girl I'm dating, that I'm seeing this stuff, has already told me that after she watches this video, she's going to have some very imaginative ways to take her rage out on me. Hey. Okay, so Paper Girls, okay? The book that I heard about other people talking beforehand. The book that is the buyer's pick at Books A Million. I got this on sale, volume 1. I put it in there. I finally got to read it. The book that has won 2 Eisners. The book that a lot of people really, really like and stuff. So I started hearing people describe this book, and it's on the internet and things, and it's going to be War of the Worlds meets Stand By Me. It's a period piece of a bunch of 12-year-old paper girls on their bikes and things in 1988. Against like an alien invasion or something, you know, it just had this little mystique about it, and it is loved and stuff. So I didn't really collect it. Something about it wasn't really clicking with me because I just didn't really see a whole lot out there about it. So I read this book. I read volume 1, the first 6 issues. Brian K. Vaughan, Cliff Chang, you know, doing their thing. And I've seen some reviews that are pretty good about it. I got to see a few non-spoiler ones. I kind of Googled a little bit and stuff, and I'm like, how am I missing this? And I think what it is that the hype killed it. People liked it, and when you say that it's about Stand By Me meets War of the Worlds and things like that, that's some pretty serious shit to me. I'm going to explain that in a minute. First of all, what we have here is I'm going to be objective about what I didn't like about the book. Now, this is a book where I want to read volume 2 to see where this goes, to see if it gets better, see if it clicks with me. But I don't want to spend the money. I got this on sale, and I got number 1 off of eBay before I got this, and it was just enough to get me in there. It felt like exposition. But a couple of things that really gets me about the book is that, number 1, the 4 girls, there's no real characterization in there at all, okay? This is a book where it feels like Brian K. Vaughan is writing a story that follows like dominoes, okay? Our main character wakes up. She has a Monster Squad poster on her Monster Squad poster on her room. She's having a dream about the Challenger, an astronaut from the Challenger talking to her and stuff. So that's some 80's references. Later on, she'll have another dream where she's ice skating with Ronald Reagan, and they pull out a little scene from that I kind of did get a kick out of, if there was any positive in here I could get, of waking up in the patch, the Charlie Brown, Halloween pumpkin patch, where I was kind of looking for Linus and Lucy in there and stuff, right? And all these things, right? And they get in there, and some of the things, there's very few techniques of storytelling that just really gets on my nerves, and that's when you do things. There's several things, and this book has them all. That's what surprises me. So that's why it's kind of hard for me to really say anything positive about it, because it's got several things that does not allow me to just enjoy the book or suspend my disbelief. First of all, the storytelling feels like he's just from there and he's pushed dominoes and they've stopped and he's gone on and he's wrote other books like probably Saga and everything like that, and he comes back to Paper Girls and this is just something to kind of type out and kind of get out there. There's no characterization. We have one girl in particular, the first one, I don't remember their names and stuff, but she wakes up and she goes out on her own. And so apparently she doesn't have a lot of friends is what I kind of get up there. And she gets picked on by two guys on Halloween night dressed like Freddy Krueger and stuff. So now we're starting to get splatters of this nostalgia I think I'm trying to hit at feeling like it's 1988. And, you know, of course the bullies are going to get her. And the three other Paper Girls come up and they save the day. And the story gets rolling. And all of a sudden, just because this girl's woke up from a dream and had gone out and she meets everybody, it has this feeling of like, now let's just get on with the story. And they try to get this fast pace going with it, where it's left and right. I got a problem with that because there's no real exposition. There's no, I don't know what, there's a way of doing storytelling where you have exposition and then like there's kind of like a hump in the story where you kind of build up tension and you work towards a climax, a rise in action maybe, then you have a climax and it comes down and you get three things. I don't feel any of that in this. I don't feel there's any story structure in there I can follow. So I'm like, hey, maybe he's doing this in acts. Maybe there's a first act, a third act, second act, a third act. We meet the characters. Here's the problem. Second act, you know, everything goes to hell. Your characters are at their lowest point. The bad guys look like they're winning. Then the third act comes in and this is where they get redeemed and you have the happy ending or continuation for maybe a trilogy or something. No, didn't catch that a bit. That's why I want to read the second trade. Maybe there's going to be some kind of story structure. Not there for me. Third thing that bothers me about this book is that you have just these four characters. You have just those bullies. And then you kind of find out that is it an invasion or is it not an alien invasion? And you find out it's time travel. So now all of a sudden you just got like these three guys sort of dressed up like ninjas who are actually from the future, and one gets killed and who's the bad guy. And then you have these other characters pop up who seem to be like an old man, you know, wearing an Apple t-shirt, so it gives you the idea he's from the 60s. And you've got like this space knight from the future who's kind of talking like they're on Twitter with their speech, has a lance and things like that. And that's it. That's all the characters you get. You get somebody who kind of just steps in, I guess, to have an excuse to do something very bad to one of the girls. One of the girls gets shot in the stomach by an alcoholic mother of one of the girls. But that's just it. It doesn't feel like they're part of any world. It feels like it's just them. That's the character. It's very claustrophobic, and I kind of call that the Matrix thing. It makes the story very thin. And the book tries to be so fast-paced. There's parts in there I saw where it needed to slow down. When the one girl gets shot in the stomach and she's got a freaking wound in there, nobody's really freaking out the correct way. They're all going about having their little drama, and meanwhile she's just sitting there kind of like bleeding from the stomach. And I'm like, here's your chance to have some tension and some characterization. No. But it's just like I said, it's just dominoes. It doesn't really, it's like it's turning left and right just to mess with the reader. Oh, it's getting a little predictable, or oh, they won't be seeing this coming. And to me, that's not really readable. And that does not make for it to be a bad story, but it's just like all these little writing shortcuts, techniques, whatever, are all in there that get on my nerves. So it's a book that does not click with me. People love the book. It's won 2 Eisners. It's a pick of the thing. It's been celebrated. I think the 12th issue just came out on March 1st. I'm recording this on March 12th, or 2nd, excuse me, March 2nd. So I'm fine with saying that it's just a book not for me. It's not the kind of thing where I would say don't go buy it. I would not tell anybody not to go buy this book. I kind of encourage a few people to buy the book for 2 reasons. Number one, the book is loved by a lot of people, and I'm in the situation of, just doing a comic book review, and I'm kind of shitting on it. But there's other people that I respect that know comics that love this book. Second of all, I would like for somebody else to read it and to give an honest idea of what is there. Maybe they can talk to me and let me see what's in the book. So, the other thing that's wrong with this book is that I thought it was going for a big nostalgia feel with the 80s. And there's like little toys here and there. Maybe some... They're on their bikes, kind of like, I guess they're trying to be the Goonies there with their things. It doesn't really feel like there's a guns. There doesn't really feel like it doesn't feel like these girls are in the 80s. By the end of the 6th issue, the last chapter of this, they're in the 90s meeting a future version of one of the girls and stuff. So maybe it was a description of the book before I read it, the hype before I read it. I don't know. So that's one reason maybe why I didn't like it. It was the hype, the way the book was described, right? And that's the problem, okay? I had two childhoods, okay? Up until, I remember the 70s as a kid. And then it's kind of like I grew up in the 80s. And then I became an adult in the 90s and stuff, right? And the movies from the 80s are maybe, and it doesn't, I know growing up in that era, there's a nostalgia, and I watched these movies when I was a kid and loved them, and went to the theaters and saw them, so I know that's there. But you had movies like The Outsiders, okay? You had kids in the Monster Squad. You have Explorers, okay? You have the Goonies. Again, you have the Goonies. Clamshell VHS. You have the Monster Squad. And of course you had Stand By Me. And that's where they fucked up, saying that this book was like Stand By Me meets War of the Worlds. What do all these movies have in common? What is it about 80s movies and touching on that era of the 80s that I think needs to be there for you to say that you're going to have a period piece in the 80s? You had your John Hughes films that were just kind of fun in a fictional town of Illinois and stuff. Great characters and had a little bit of angst in there and some funny stuff. But overall, the 80s in the movies and stuff, you also had Karate Kid and Legends and things like that. They were about the underdogs. The imperfect heroes, growing up while you're getting through this movie and becoming something. You were fighting against the odds in all these movies. And that's why those movies touched a lot of people. That's why 80s movies was, throughout the 80s, even the bad movies that are considered bad movies have become cult classics and stuff that flopped back then, all right? There's this heart of the underdog coming up. Dark Crystal, one Elfling against all the Skeksis in that whole freaking world. A little weak, things like that. 80s. Yeah, and then there was heart. There was people growing up. You watch Stand By Me, man, and these are the little kids fighting Eyeball and all those guys, the gang going to go see a dead body, and it was more about the journey and them talking to each other and talking about how the adults have all the power and things like that, and then they had to find what was in them. It was about power. And for me, growing up in the 80s, I have no problem doing this review to a certain extent because I grew up pretty much like one of those underdogs. That's kind of how I felt. I grew up in a coal mining town. And the coal mining town that I grew up in, what I took out of it was, right down the middle, rich, poor. That's how it was in school and everything. If you worked in the coal mines or if you owned a business, all the other stores would raise the prices up to get them in there. And the people with the normal jobs, I guess is the way to put it, and, having income stuff, couldn't afford to go to those stores. They jacked them up because of the rich people. Then you go to school and the lines were divided. They were called preps and things like that. That's some derogatory terms for the people who didn't wear the best jeans and bought their tennis shoes at the dollar store and things like that. And what went through the 80s and stuff, it was music and the parties and little things and your friends and things, and your friends, and you got that bike, and that bike was your freedom to go right around. We played in the woods and stuff. We didn't let these things bring us down when they got in our face. You had your bullies and stuff, right? But it didn't take over your life. You did not let people take your power. You didn't have words for these things, but it taught you to fight. It kind of taught you to go against the grain. And I'm well aware I was a little bit more different. I was that, if this was the Breakfast Club, I probably would have been the weird kid that drew the forest on her, or whatever it was, the castle, the forest on her desk, and then took her dandruff to make snow and all that stuff. That's probably been a bit more me than I want to admit and stuff, right? But it was always like the adventures going outside and stuff. And then when you get older and you got to go out with your friends, I'm lucky enough to where it was like I was not all about, your typical teenage boy of like all about girls and stuff. It was like, get some freaking friends, leave the shit at the house, get away from these, people at school and stuff, and let's go out and have a good time. And everything else fell in place with that. And that's where you found your friends and things like that. So it was always a good time, just part of growing up, and who can't relate to a lot of that? Different era, but kind of universal at the same time. So for Paper Girls to sit there and be part of that era, there's little details and things that I want to see in it and stuff, right? Like it's all dialogue and it's all action through the book. It could use some descriptive boxes and stuff in there. You know, remember when you had yellow boxes in your comic books and stuff, and they would narrate or describe the book and stuff. If you're going to describe 1988, I want to give you a little clue here, man. Okay, 1988. It smelled like three things. Okay, denim, apple scented hairspray, and Liz Claiborne perfume. Okay, that's the 80s. That's what it smelled like. Okay, you got that? So that's what I'm saying. Maybe build that world a little bit with some descriptive boxes, as I've explained at the Twilight and stuff like that. And then one thing for people who are out there, please leave it in the comments. The colors in this, right? They go for a very pastel and odd coloring in the books. I thought they were going for Twilight. I thought maybe if they time traveled the colors in here, the oranges and the hues and the blues and the purples and things like that, just the odd coloring in it. Make it night. Is it Twilight? What's going on? I really think they just did this. It doesn't seem to really serve the story is what I'm getting at. Maybe they're just going for a unique look in the book, right? But it doesn't serve the story in any way that I could tell. I was looking for things like, is this like a David Lynch movie where you got to look for red and blues to know what the dream is and what reality is, like in Mulholland Drive, or anything? Is it set in the mood? I don't see it. I mean, even on the cover, we got the red and blue, and I'm just not getting the colors. It actually takes me out of the story. Maybe I'm looking for things that aren't there. And it seems like I had one more thing to say about it, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Not really impressed. It's not bad. It just doesn't live up to the hype. And I could point out other things, but I'm not going to tear it up. But there you are. There's the 80s and Paper Girls here, right? So by all means, check out Paper Girls. And by all means, I'm going to let you know I'm going to check out the second volume, but I'm not paying for it. I'll borrow it or something, okay? To see if it gets any better. If it does, I'll make a video saying if I've changed my mind about the Paper Girls, since this is such a beloved little comic. So let me see if I have described everything. Yeah, I don't know. Could it be just a case of this is how I would have done it? They didn't do it the way I would have done it? Could be. So this is one of the few times I'm going to ask for a thumbs up, and I'm going to say if you're a Paper Girls lover, I have picked I'm not saying it's a battle, but coming out of the 80s, keeping that power for myself and, learning the differences between not letting people take your power away and not letting them down and feeling like I'm an underdog. Still at 44, I still feel like I'm kind of fighting and stuff like that. I feel like what I got out of that was there was an integrity and an honesty, and that's all this is. I'm not tearing up the book to be an ass or anything like that, but that's the integrity, the honesty that comes from that. The second thing I learned is, one of the best things you can do to get through life is to not always think that you're right about everything. So much like I started out the video talking about, Frankencastle, Punisher, I'm all willing to say that I'm wrong after I read volume 2. It's not a retraction. It's not me stepping back. It's just, that's volume 1. I hope it gets better.